Yep, we're ready. Good evening. To all interested inhabitants of the town of Sutton, in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 11, the Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing at the Sutton Town Hall on October 4th, 2018, at 7:30 p.m. on the petition of Mark Frankian. The petitioner requests a special permit, Section 7A2, as it pertains to 1C 2D of the town's zoning bylaws for the tear down and rebuild of a single-family home. The property that is the subject of this petition is located at 172.5 Manchog Road, as shown on Assessor's Map number 42, parcel number 14. The property is located in the residential rural zoning district. A copy of the petition may be inspected during normal office hours in the town clerk's office, located in the town hall. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on this variance petition should appear at the time and place designated. Daniel Petrelli, Board of Appeals Clerk. Welcome tonight, and if you could just state your name for the record.
Thank you.
If you could just tell us a little bit about your petition this evening.
Evening, sir. We have a small camp that we'd like to turn into a year-round, and the second floor on it, and we're doing something.
So are you maintaining the same footprint?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
On the plan, the plot plan, there's on the side, there's a covered porch,
Yes.
but it's not really a covered porch, right? It's covered in the front, but it becomes part of the foundation in the back.
It will be enclosed, but it'll be part of the enclosed part of the house after.
So that's there's an existing covered porch there now, so that's part of the existing what's there,
Yes.
and it's gonna get closed in.
And John said that I could, he said that's covered, you can enclose that.
And in terms of proximity of neighbors, are there people behind you or on either side of you, or?
Either side, lake, either side, nothing behind the house.
Nothing behind you. And the second story increases the height of the building.
15 feet from the-
It's an existing,
Right,
no, an existing
Do you have the
single
petition?
story. What's that?
the actual petition that was filed.
Lynn, is this one next to the other one we did?
Yep, that's it right here, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I saw in here that you had your tight tank
Yes.
updated.
Yes,
Is that sufficient?
yes, 2,500 gallons.
And you've talked to the people within the town, and that'll be sufficient to service the needs of this?
Yeah, your engineer, Mr.
Malley?
Malley, yeah. Because it was originally 1,500, and we found a plastic tank that was 2,500 gallons, and he approved it, and so that's even better.
So how many bedrooms does that cover? Two?
Just two.
How many are
That's
there
all.
now? How many bedrooms are there now?
Two.
Two, okay.
Is the den gonna have a widened opening on the first floor?
Just that cased opening.
Cased
In
opening?
my office. In the office, yes.
How wide is that? How wide is the opening?
The opening, it says 2'6". So,
You may wanna just double check with Board of Health on that, because that could be a potential bedroom, unless you put a wider cased opening.
There's not much room there, but yeah, we can make that bigger. There's no closets or anything in it, it's just a,
Yeah, they don't go by closets.
even though he
Just
shows
to
it.
save you time, you know, you may wanna look at it, have them look at it now.
How wide does the should the opening be?
John, what does Board of Health normally say for a cased opening?
They try to get, an odd size, 42 inches, or, double, 5-foot opening.
So you wouldn't put a door on it later, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
that's really not within our scope to dictate that.
Nope.
Is the garage, you're not doing anything with the garage, it's standing?
the garage, it's an existing garage. We're gonna take the roof off, go up a 3-foot wall, and then put a bigger pitch just for storage up above. It's about a 10 pitch on there.
So all of the new construction activities stay within the footprint of what's there,
Yes,
with the exception of the addition of the second level of house
Yes.
and the increasing in the height of the ridge of the garage.
yes. And the walls on the garage will stay.
Hmm.
And the house that is in the
Is this consistent with the height of the other lots? The other houses.
I think when I scaled it out, it's 24 to 26 feet tall, from the lakeside up.
What about from the road?
Be less, I think it'll look at,
sit
yeah, 5 or 6 feet, yeah.
The elevation,
Roadside, it'll look
Smaller.
shorter on, from the roadside.
the elevation of the floors is gonna stay the same, the basement elevation?
The basement right now, you've got a, so,
But as far as,
yeah, that foundation stays.
The floor.
It just stays, yeah.
Yeah,
you're gonna leave the existing foundation, or you're gonna replace it?
no, that stays.
Oh, really?
And what we're
Okay.
gonna do is we're gonna put on top of the concrete block, just to get more headroom. You've been down in the basement, Doc.
Yeah, just so they clearly understand the scope of this. So you're taking the entire structure down to the foundation.
Yes,
The prior code, building code, this is something you're not aware of. The prior building code allowed you to go down to this point, but you're going beyond 50%, so you'd have that foundation, it will have to come up to code, whatever the issues are with it.
when you looked at it, it was a 12-inch concrete block foundation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I look at a lot of things. I
I
remember everything.
I asked you
But
before I started.
we were under
all
the
this.
9th edition of the code, we are now under under the 8th edition of code, we're now under the 9th edition. It's a different code, and there are a few things, and this 50% rule kicks off a lot of things. So, I mean, I just wanted you to be aware of that, but, so, you wanna bring it down to the foundation, you're removing all the floor joists, so it'll just be foundation, you're gonna start from there and go up with a totally new structure.
Because, John, they're 2x6 joists.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to be clear, I mean, the way this is kinda laid out, I was understanding it, maybe you just start putting a second floor on it, but
Gotcha.
Yeah.
everything that's there is being erased with the exception of the foundation.
And there'd be a new foundation with porches. The covered porch. And you said that we had to have the piers checked, or we had to put new piers out in the front for that.
Yep, have to be sufficient.
All right, we have any other questions from the board?
No.
I don't see anyone in the audience who would have any questions. All right, what do you think about a site visit?
I think it's a good idea.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we were next door a couple dozen times, but, what's everybody's schedule look like?
Wide open.
Wide open.
How do you like that, huh?
I've got 15 minutes 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a maybe.
You can retire.
What are you thinking, a Saturday morning, right after work, it gets dark earlier
Right.
than it did a month ago.
Whatever works for everybody, I don't know.
Yeah, Saturday or Sunday would be fun.
Be fine.
I prefer Sunday, but whatever, it's all good.
Might actually work better for me, cause probably gonna be working Saturday, but.
I'll make a motion for Sunday.
Second. Wait, do we have one?
That's not how that works. This Sunday? Sure.
Works for me.
6 a.m.? Just
How come so late?
Yeah, I'm okay Sunday, anytime in the morning. Earlier the better.
What's that?
Fine.
7 or 8?
Works for me. What do you wanna do? Getting up early?
Always.
I like 8.
All right.
All right. We'll do a site visit this Sunday, 8 AM.
Never
If
mentioned.
you'd like to be there, that would be great if you can. If not, we'll poke around and
72 and a half.
see what we need to see.
You want me to be there, I'll be there.
If it's not an inconvenience, come on down.
It is helpful.
Sure. I'll be there.
All right. So we have that scheduled for Sunday. I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing.
November 1st at 7:40?
I'll make a motion to continue to November 1st, 7:30,
7:40.
7:40.
Something like that.
All those in favor? Aye. See you Sunday morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, John,
All right, I will
all right,
accuse
Patriots
myself at
game
this point.
starts at 8:20.
Comes the chairman.
I know.
Seniority.
No.
That's all you
That's not how
You
that
were
works
supposed to
either.
be there?
Most similar first name, I think.
No. Wrong again.
It's a late night.
Yeah, that's a tough.
It's a late night, oh, absolutely. Sitting in traffic in the parking lot has to be painful at midnight.
Okay, I'm not sure who the chair is. Acting chair.
I don't know.
So anyways, we're here for a couple of things. One is for Leland Hill Estates, for the bond reduction, and also to discuss finalizing things for the process to start for the road acceptance. So I'm assuming that everybody's had a copy of the bond reduction, and the only real question I have on it, there's about 4 remaining items on there, and one of which is the trees, the screening trees that go behind lots 25 and 26. I believe some of the members, at John's encouragement, had an opportunity to go out there and see it. And what it is that my predecessor had cleared a lot of land prior to this, so in 2010, we were going through the process. We had agreed to put some screening in there, but over the last 8 years, there's been a lot of growth that's happened in a low-lying area. In addition, we put up a berm, and you saw that we put out 6 trees there, but because Jeff Walsh initially had counted 64 trees in there, he was required to carry them, so there's 58 trees that are being carried right now. It's 64 minus the 6 that we put in. And it's just my opinion that we don't need them, but it's at the board's discretion, so I'd like to see if we could get some feedback on that. Those are that's the only question on the bond, so that we can put that to bed. So, I don't know if the members have had time to think about that, or, so I'll open it up for discussion.
Any discussion?
I guess I was confused because the plan had the trees before the berm, correct? Like the as-built plan was for a certain number of trees. So.
Yes, what it was is that behind that berm area that you saw, and I have the plans, I could do it, let me back up. We purchased this as a subdivision that was already, the land was cleared and the roads were in, and there was going to be a building back in that area. We pulled the building away from there, so he ended up coming approximately 10 feet away from the lot line, which there was a pool about 10, let's say 11 feet away. So now that berm and the, the lot line is approximately guesstimating 75 feet, I think, somewhere in that area. And it's had, about 8 years of growth, and it's grown up in that area. And then we put the berm that, it's probably at the lowest point beyond that berm is probably, I think Jeff Walsh had estimated about 15 plus feet, somewhere around there.
Lower.
The drop?
Lower, and then we put the berm, which is approximately 4 to 5 feet, and then we put some shrubs on top of that. But the intent was to give the abutter some privacy for the pool, and I think that's been accomplished. So, and I think everybody saw that there's no way we could put 64 trees out there if we ever had to. So there's 6, and I guess the question is 6 sufficient? Is it some number greater than 6? I don't think it's the remaining 58, and Jeff understandably has to carry that for bond purposes, so.
So I don't disagree with that, John. I think that I get feedback, it's like I'm on, in concert here. The remaining 58 trees, I think, would be excessive. There's really nowhere to put them. I think the berm creates part of that barrier. I also think that again, my opinion, that the growth over the last so many years has also screened from one house, but I understand also there was an abutter who had expressed an opinion, and when we walked that day, when we walked the property and we walked further, I don't know the direction, but when we walked along the berm to the end of the berm, we saw the 15-foot drop, but then we could also see the house beyond. So it doesn't seem that it's that it's as thick right there. The growth is as thick. So I don't know if it's possible to maybe plant a few of the trees across the top of the berm to fill in that area, but I don't think that's the area of concern. I think it's where the berm ends that those neighbors can see right through.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I kind
Fair.
of feel the same way as Rich. I don't think 64 trees is, very practical, but I do think some number.
Well, one item that we had looked at is possibly the area, just so for conversation purposes, we know it is in between lot 25 and 26. That's, in between there. So,
Is that the end of the berm, John?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, at the end of it starts at lot 25 and 26. So when you go into the cul-de-sac, I guess it'd be counterclockwise. So 25 is at approximately 11 o'clock, and 26 is at midnight, somewhere roughly in
Okay.
that area. So I know it was discussed that we could add to fill in that area, because there's approximately, I don't know, a 10 or 12 foot separation in between them. I think, it was discussed that in that area there, do we add another 6 in there? We could do that. That, I don't know that going further to lot 26, it makes a lot of sense to add them there, because there was quite a bit of growth that's in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was more closer to the lot 25, which you're referring to as the end.
I agree with that.
So, I mean, if you want me to add 6 more in there, in that area, in between the existing ones, like fill it in, it might be, take the first one and put 2 in between,
Mhm.
what's now the second, and then put 2 more in between what's now the second and third, and then put 2 more in. I can do that. if
Okay.
That's what you want.
And do you have a suggestion to how to handle that, that 10:30 spot on the clock, so I think the concern is not so much that people can see beyond, if they're looking out there on that court, on that cul-de-sac, that people can see into the neighbor's backyard. I think it's that the neighbors can look this way, and that, again, is, from what I understand, the person who expressed an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we would have to put trees in there that are extremely high. We could put deciduous trees in there, which are ones that would lose their leaves in the winter, and then I don't know that they'd get the protection. Those would grow much higher,
Mm-hmm.
quicker, but I don't know that, they wouldn't get protection year-round. One of the other issues we have is, if we put in arborvitaes, will the deer eat them? I know there are deer-resistant arborvitaes, but they're not always deer resistant. But I think they're gonna continue to grow the trees, but it was primarily, and I don't think we've ever had a complaint from this abutter, you know, from what's happening there, and I think once we saw the middle of it fell in, I think it has fulfilled the intent of what was supposed to be there for the, shrubs, because it was clear cut, and I will add that it was probably clear cut, John, you might know better than I would, but in the 2006 to 2007 timeframe, they paved it, I believe, in '07, somewhere in that, so the clearing was already done, so there's probably 11 or 12 years of growth in there now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, roughly in there. But if you wanted to have me add a few more to, I guess it'd be the end of it, which would be close to lot 25, we could do that as well.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to adding more trees, it's more, how do we agree on a number and go out and do it? Because the remaining items on here, we should have done before your next board meeting. Some of these, one I completely missed because it was 7 years ago when Jeff didn't miss it. It was the trees around the detention pond. The telemetry system is coming in next week, and then the catch basin we're doing in about a week. So that's what I'm trying to do, is bring closure to it for what we have over there. So I'm open to your suggestions on the numbers.
So I understand what you're proposing, just because I'm the guy who's gonna have to be out there talking with you. So the existing trees that were on top of the berm, there was a space in between them, so we're saying plant a tree, trees in between those, or a tree,
Yeah, stagger 'em.
and stagger them. Because the one thing that I just wanna consider, what you don't wanna do is overcrowd them now.
They won't grow
Yeah,
well.
well, then they grow up and they'll all die.
Yeah.
That's the,
Mhm.
you know, I would suggest maybe one in between each of them, and then probably,
But not more than that, right?
And then maybe 2 or 3 down at the end on 25.
yeah, where we walked in was fine, where we walked out was a little
Right.
sparse on
Right.
that end. That's,
That's fine, I mean, I can even meet John down there, we can just, you know, dig them and put them
Okay.
in.
I'd be happy with that.
Me too.
Yeah.
So 6 is the number,
whatever,
with you
yeah.
down there, we can
It
do
would
a
be what, filling in a tree
Filling in the-
between each of the trees,
Right.
and then 2 or 3, depending on what's necessary to complete the screen on the
Like-
end.
It's probably
Just
like
like-
it's probably like 8 or 9.
The closer we get to lot 26, it didn't appear that we needed any, like, on the right end, as
Mhm.
you're looking
Yeah.
at it, they needed more on the left end,
Agreed.
Yes, I
where
agree.
the blue house was back there.
Yeah, 'cause you had a lot of pine trees back in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they had plenty of screening and, all right, so we'll add 6 more, so I guess what that would do is bring, instead of 58 trees, it'd be 6 times 250 plus the 15%.
Be like 8 or 9, right? 6 in between, 2 at the end, or
I'm trying to visualize
I
it.
don't know.
I think it's more.
Also with John's discretion, we're gonna put them in there anyway.
I
I was
In
gonna
between
say, I'm
every
very
other
comfortable.
one, and then maybe 2 on the end there.
I'm very
John,
comfortable
if
with
John's
that.
going there to look at it, then I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Okay,
Alright,
so I guess we have to do is adjust that number from 58 trees down to 6 or 8.
Less than 10?
Less than 10, yeah.
I think we have to almost be somewhat specific. I mean, if John goes down there and says it has to be 10, there's still plenty of funds in there, and I have a lot of incentive to. This is like being at the goal line, and Lynn, you can probably appreciate, 8 years ago, we were not even in the stadium. So now, I mean, I'll meet out there with John. It's not a big deal to add 1 or 2 more trees. I think we're all out there that day, and one of the neighbors was home and wondering why we're in a yard, and I think we all wanted to be respectful of wanting to walk in a new lawn.
Mm-hmm.
what kind of trees are we looking for?
Some sort of an evergreen,
Evergreen,
something
yeah,
that doesn't
something
lose its.
similar to what's out there.
Something that doesn't lose
Okay.
its,
Alright,
So you want me to put 8 trees in here? 6?
Less
why
than
don't we
10.
carry 10, and
Okay, so there goes
if you
10.
don't have room, we can always.
Yeah, we can slice and dice it from 10.
if it turns out to be less, John, that, I'm fine with
Yeah,
that.
me too.
Yeah.
That's 375. So we have to adjust the bond amount by that. So it goes, basically what I did is Jeff has costing each tree out at $250 times 10, and instead of the 14,500, it'd be 2,500. So we have 2,500 plus 1,000 is 3,500, plus 1,900 is 5,400. And 15% of 5,400.
Well, we'll take 12,000 off the total, so it would be 40 instead of 52.
You're gonna get the 15%, so it'd be 540 plus 270. So it'd be 710 for the,
I got that one
Yeah.
here, right?
John, I'm looking at
That's-
this, it
when
says
we get a
bounds
final
and
number, that
granite.
goes on
Did
here.
you do all the, did you pin all the lots?
yes, Lynn got a letter from John, oh, actually, which one am I looking at? Yes, John, we did all the ones, it called for 34 of them.
Well, no, actually, the decision calls for, it says that each lot should have steel pins in the front and back. I just thought you were gonna do them all in the end.
We are, I think that they're done.
No, there was nothing up there the other.
I didn't see anything.
A week ago.
They were
It's a
trampling
good
that lady's
question.
lawn.
He's
I-
got it
I
marked
can
out
prove
at
it.
0.
It is a requirement,
Yeah,
and we put the bounds in with all the drill holes.
I seen those, the square bounds, the concrete
Let me
bounds.
check with, Heritage, on those. Those were the ones that in the front we had pins, and in the rear we had to put them in somewhat of a practical location, like they weren't gonna go out in the wetlands, they were gonna
Yeah.
go out in the disturbed area.
So why is there a 0 quantity on there? Is that because they haven't been?
Check.
I don't know, they weren't,
Yeah.
the last, I've never seen them in the front, cause that's kind of a substantial job.
The other bounds were much harder, because we had to put them in 3 to 4 feet deep, and, 4 feet, but some of them wouldn't go down 4
But
feet.
how long will it take a survey crew to shoot all them points?
Not long. They already have them. I really think that, I don't wanna go out on a limb and say that they're done. I don't. I have been on them for getting these done. Let me check on it. I don't wanna
Yeah.
speak on it.
I haven't seen them, I haven't been up there in a week,
Okay,
so.
all right. I'll check on those front ones. Okay, so I'm trying to figure out the bond amount, so the one that's on Hunter's Court goes, the 14,500 goes to 2,500, and then it's 5,400 for the subtotal, and 710 is the 15% contingency, so it goes to 6,110. And then he's got, there's no issue at all with the front one there, on Partridge Hill Road. So it'd be 32 plus 6110, 32,085 plus 6210. 38,295. I don't know if you followed my math on that one there. Everything's fine on the Partridge Hill one, but the other goes to a subtotal of 5,400 plus 710 is the 15% contingency.
I'm sorry, you said the telemetry system was installed?
No, it was not
Okay.
installed. It's on order. We had to, Don Obuchowski, our communication person, had met with him and figured out what they wanted. The street trees, around the detention pond, I would have put them in, but as I mentioned, I missed those. We eliminated some guardrails in lieu of street trees about 6 years ago. But we had just planted the grass there, and I didn't want them going in there and, disturbing the grass. I figured let it come in, and then that catch basin frame for $900, we've gotta change that. It goes from a single to a double. And then the rest is like the as-built and acceptance plans, which we've already, we're a long way along with those. They were submitted once to Jeff for review without the top coat of pavement. Now the top coat of pavement's on there, so they're submitting more to them. It's just they're so detailed that we submitted them earlier, so I'm hoping that Jeff will have them signed off by the next meeting that you have in November. And so I guess if you wanna stick with the bond, if we can, I guess, vote on that to reduce it to 38,295. And then I'll talk to you about what's happening with the road.
Are you still looking at a December first project completion date, or do you need to extend that out?
No, I'm looking at December first. I've been motivated to get this done. I mean, if I am, Lynn, I would bring it up at the November meeting. If
Okay.
people know that they have till December 31st still.
Because that will be reflected on the bond, that's why I'm asking now.
Yeah. I mean, if you're comfortable with at the end of December, I'm comfortable with that.
Oh, it's up to the board.
31st or 1st? I'm confused on this.
The original said December first,
This one.
and I had written in the 31st in error. So, but if the board wants to extend it out to the 31st, just make note of it.
What should we do about the bounds? How should we?
Yeah.
I think some of those, I don't wanna say, he has acceptance plans in here and as-built plans for like 15,000. I mean, I don't know that they're in there, and I don't wanna go out on a limb, but I know that I had hired them. They've been working on some of these for a long time to do them, particularly in the first part. I'll get that answer. I mean, we're gonna put them in. I have every incentive to put these in because I wanna have the road accepted. We're responsible for it, and I don't wanna go through
So it's not listed as a reduction.
it's not.
No, but it's not on there, you don't have it, you're not carrying any money for it.
There's a unit price, but no units applied to
Right.
it.
We don't know what the quantity would be.
I have no idea what it would cost to put those bounds in.
Mm.
So it's up to you guys what you wanna do with that.
I don't think it's as much, John, as you might think, because we have as-built plans, like every house that we put in, we have to give a certified plot plan, so they have all the control for it, for the ones that aren't in there. So it's just a matter of going out there and, you
Putting
know.
pins in, but there's a lot of pins, there's what, 50-something lots?
Yeah, there's about 200 and, I guess, 208 pins, something like that, 52 times 4.
So, just rough mathematics here. What are you figuring, 2 guys to survey team?
No, there's one, they have like a robot now. They don't even have a rod man or anything like that. They just
Alright, how much does he get an hour?
The robot
Yeah, I
is
don't know.
overpaid.
Robot or
And what do they get an hour for the
I
guy to
don't
be?
know what they get an hour, to be honest with you. I think what they're gonna do is get paid by
Alexa.
the pin, is what they'll do, because they have all
Alexa,
the
do
control. And some of it's, I think, already in with the
Boundaries.
bounds. I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen any pins in there per se. I've gotten the as-built on each of these houses. But I don't have the pins that were required, I didn't see them.
So the bond reduction, just for point of clarification, takes place now, or after we vote on it, some short time after now. But we can't contingent the bond reduction on the pin
Is
placement.
this
You
something
can't be
that
spending
can wait
money
till
on it.
next month, or?
No, I really wanna get the ball. I've done a lot of work down there. I mean, hundreds of thousands, but to answer your question, it is in the special permit, it is, what John's discussing, it is a requirement, meaning I have to do this before I could get the road accepted.
Okay.
Before you could advance it. I
And it
am
has a
all
price.
in.
This is $315 each, right?
So 315
So
to
it's-
200 is a lot.
65,000.
Yeah, $65,000.
It has a price list. It just has 0 units. $315 per unit for bounds granite.
I mean, if you figure
Um,
30 minutes a
That's
piece.
a different bound, that's a granite one.
Oh, I
And,
see.
They're very, very involved, the granite bound is expensive.
108
That
hours
we
tops.
needed, technically we needed 34, but some of them fell in driveways. So we had to put in, it's known as an RPK spike that Jeff wanted in there.
We
So
have,
those That's not the same
That's 2
bound,
pins
these
an
are just
hour.
like,
do you think that's a realistic figure? What if we,
I don't know, how many pins an hour you think you can do?
well, keep in mind, when he does lot 1 and 2, he's just doing a bound in between 1 and 2.
And then he goes to,
Yeah,
yeah, so
then he
there
goes
is,
to
It's like
in
2 per
between
lot.
2 and 3, so there aren't, it's not as long as you'd think. He just has to keep getting the side lot lines.
I don't know, I would figure it would take a guy at least 3 days to do that,
Oh, I think it's less than that.
3 or 4 days.
He's already got the as-bills. He did the bounds in less than a day.
Yeah, but there's only 10 bounds, isn't there?
Those were very hard, the bounds. And I say the bounds because if you can envision this, they're 4 inches by 4 inches. And so we had to actually excavate the area and make sure that they were precisely in the area. These are like a pin, which is much easier to go in the ground and they don't have to go down 4 feet. Those were,
How far are they going?
those were hard.
What about, if
Going
you
1
look
foot
at the
or-
math, John, we've got the trees, right? So at there'd be like 12,000 off of the trees if we just kept it at the 52 and 12 covered the bounds, right? Just to, does that?
I would think that would,
Do
yeah.
you think that would?
Yeah.
I mean, does that, ask him?
Just
I
leave
guess,
space
yeah.
for it, yeah.
If we were gonna vote on a reduction of the bond of 52,000, which carried the full 58 trees,
I guess if you want, yeah.
if
I
we
just-
were to vote on that and keep it at the 52,000 and then
Proposed
vote on a further reduction when you said all the stuff's gonna be done by the next meeting anyway, right? Then we could vote on
Yeah, that leaves
Reduction.
14,000, which is.
about your math, right,
Numbers
John?
300 a lot. I mean, that's fine with me. I guess I would say, can you stipulate that in your vote, that, or I'm fine with that. I honestly wish I could sit here and tell you they were done, but I can't.
At least that gets that's a significant reduction from
Yeah, sure,
322,000.
frees up a lot.
Well, until I read the special permit, I didn't see it, I didn't know it was, and I read the special permit, I'm like,
Would you be okay with that?
never seen one of those up there, so I knew it
Good
was
move. Smart.
required.
Yeah, I've been after Heritage to do them, and particularly some of the other ones when they've been out there in what I would call the first phase, to do them, and I've had numerous discussions with them. I wish I could, I don't have the correct, I'm not comfortable speaking
Yeah.
either way on it, so I don't wanna put my foot in my mouth. So, I guess we'll just go with the 52,000, and I'll have an answer for the, next meeting.
That works for you? You're okay with
Yeah,
that?
that's fine.
It's my first time doing one of these.
So I would add, if you want, in the motion, because it mentions Partridge Hill and Hunter's Court, you may wanna add in those bounds.
I gotta do one of these too?
No. Nope. Just that, yeah.
And we're keeping it, what do we think, December 1st, December 31st?
I would say 31st, I guess what Lynn is saying, because if we have to come back in for the December meeting for some
Yeah, just,
unknown reason, it gives us,
it's a buffer.
because I do
Sugar
see us,
process out.
unfortunately, you'll probably see me for the next couple of months every meeting. Well, it's a long process
Yeah, it
with
is.
the road. I'll get into it in a second after we finish the bond. So, I don't know if you wanna make a motion to go with the $52,000 bond.
I'll make a motion to amend the Leland Hill Estates surety agreement dated December 1st, 2016, reduce the bond from $322,000 to $52,000 for outstanding site development at Partridge Hill Road and Hunter's Court with a project completion date of no later than December 31st, 2018.
Well said. Anyone second that?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So,
Thank you,
the
John.
next-
Thanks for working with us on that.
So the next part that I wanted to talk to you about is the acceptance of the road. When we took it over, it was with the understanding that we would have the road accepted by the town. We've met, with the exception of these items here, all the criteria. It's just, it's a long, drawn-out process. Our attorney is working with Jen Hager and I know it's a responsibility of the ZBA, but it's a pretty involved process with the road acceptance, and it means town council has to get involved, and the fee for town council would be paid for out of our 53G account and so forth, and basically, in a nutshell, we have to satisfy the ZBA that we've done everything, and then it will move on to the selectmen, and they have, I think it's 1 or 2 public hearings, and then they have to put it on their warrant. And I believe the warrant closes somewhere around the February to very early March timeframe. So we basically have the November, December, and January, but I'm hoping that we can clear it up in the November, maybe December with this board, so that we can move on with the selectmen. But we're also, I wanted to let you know that we're communicating with Jen Hager, and also will be with the selectmen to say, we're close. But we have to take care of these outstanding items here. It's just, between this board meeting once a month, and the selectmen and holidays and things like that, we just wanna make sure that we're on the agenda. And, everybody that bought at Leland Hill was buying under the assumption that it would eventually be taken over as a public way.
Sure.
And we have represented to them that we're doing everything we can to make sure that happens in May. So,
What would you like us to do? Just be aware and,
yeah, just be aware and understand that I'm not working with this board, but it's very, very technical accepting a road, and Jen Hager is more familiar with it, so I didn't want you to think that, I know that she's planning board and you're a ZBA, but you're more than welcome to take on the headache, but I think that my recommendation would be pass the headache to somebody else. And, you know, we've already had conversations with Jen, and there's Copeland and Page that have to get involved to make sure the wording is correct, and, you know, it has to go to the selectmen. It's very, very, it's beyond me.
so there's two, it seems like there's 2 concurrent paths. One is making sure the work is completed to the satisfaction of Jen, and then the other is getting town council to draft all the necessary documents and get the warrant and all that stuff done, so there's a,
Somewhat. Our attorney will draft the documents, and they'll be reviewed by town council, and the review costs for town council will come out of our 53G account.
Okay.
It'll be at no cost to the town.
so what could trip the process up at this point? Physically accepting the work, or acknowledging that the punch list is complete, or what?
Correct. These items aren't complete, because we're gonna start it with the selectmen saying, these are the items that are done, here's our action plan. Like, you know, we plan to have these done for November. You know, we've been hit with a lot of rain in the month of September, and, you know, we put paving off 3 times down at Leland Hill, and there's nothing we can do to control that. Our intentions are very good. I don't see any reason why we can't, but it might be that we get back in here and those bounds weren't in, and I got 40 of the 52 in, and I can say, look, they're going out because whatever the conditions are, you know. Our biggest obstacle, believe it or not, was getting the streetlights in and getting them to be LED. That was a huge accomplishment. I don't consider it a huge accomplishment, but the logistics of getting that done was,
So are there 2 or 3 lights?
There are
Because
3
there's
lights.
3 on the plan.
yes, what ended up happening is I was required to put in 3 lights. And one was at the entrance of Partridge Hill and Leland Hill Road. One was what I would know as the first right-hand turn, which is a one-way, we call that the first bridge. And then the 3rd light was at the intersection of Hunter's Court and Partridge Hill Road. But what ended up happening is that when it went through National Grid, all the light number 3 at Hunters and Partridge is in where it should be. The one at the first bridge is in where it should be, but at the entrance, there were already existing poles. So what the National Grid did is, instead of making it 3, they put in 4. And if you're familiar with the bend in the road, there's one at the bend in the road there, and then there's one almost at the other bend, the southerly bend. So they got 4 lights instead of 3.
But just not one at that corner.
Pardon me?
Not one at the corner, they're further out? Is that what you're describing?
So, I guess if you come out of Partridge Hill Road to Leland Hill Road, there's one almost at, maybe 1 to 2 o'clock, and then there's one probably at about 3 to 4 o'clock. You know,
Oh,
somewhere
out
there.
on Leland Hill?
All in
Oh, I
Leland
thought you
Hill.
were talking about it way in Hunter's Court.
No,
Okay.
no, it's in there, which worked out better, and they didn't wanna put another pole in there, and they said they would give me 2 lights instead of 1. There's 2 bends in the road there, and I think it worked out better. I think you've been down there, I think it was,
Sounds like it's a better location.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, I just have one more question. I'm not sure because they're new. The homeowners association, has that been set up? Because that was one of the requirements.
Yes, the homeowners association was set up, and one of the things that we had too is the open space will be deeding it to the homeowners association as well. There's just so you know, if you've been down there, there's the parcel that we have developed, and I'm gonna go on a limb and say about another 30 acres off on the right-hand side, and it was agreed to that we would have that as open space, never to be built on, and would, making sure that that's deeded to the homeowners association in perpetuity. And that's one of the things that it will go through Jen/Copeland and Page, and they're gonna make sure that the wording is there. And that's without insult, I don't know if anybody's an attorney on the board, but that's where it gets pretty technical, that she's gonna make sure the wording is correct.
And that's gonna include the clearing out of the overflow parking and the mailbox areas. That's not gonna be town responsibility, correct?
I don't think it is.
Because I remember that was one of the intents of the board at the time.
It is, and we have everybody, when they moved in, they were made aware that there's an annual fee of $150, which is to clean out some of the detention ponds and to cut some of the areas of like lawn that doesn't get cut, like over the bridges and things like that. And, a lot of people will cut between the sidewalk and the street, but there are people that won't cut it, so,
The neighbors.
Yeah, so it's just, everybody pays $150. We have not collected it yet. We've been paying for everything, but they've been made aware of it. For instance, if anybody that closed, we had to give them a certificate saying that those fees were paid up to date, and it gets recorded at the registry, so, it's just something they'll have to do after they take over.
I had a question, just, the easement plans, remember we put, on the front, we put about halfway down Partridge Hill Road, as you're going down on the left-hand side, we had the areas we couldn't get out to to daylight, so there's a drain, a common drain that goes down. Did we ever do that plan, the final plan on that?
I can check on that, but I'm pretty sure we did, yes.
So I wanna make sure that that gets recorded.
Yeah, I remember that, it was, for lot 4, the red house, and 3. There was just no way to drain them, so we ended up coming down.
No, I'm talking further up from, as you come in, actually, at the crest of the road, there's probably 5 or 6 houses, maybe 7 houses there that are all in that. You got
Okay.
the backflow preventer on the perimeter drain.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Drainage.
So we're all signing this tonight, right?
I don't think we'll ever have a water problem there.
I don't either.
The new
but,
figure,
I remember
Yeah.
this.
December 31st.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
This
we
is
just
the
sign
road.
here,
Yeah,
and then
no,
someone
it
else
was,
will
it was a
sign.
good idea.
Then we'll give
other
it to
stuff.
him and he can
So
bring
is
us a
everybody okay
copy.
with
It's not a
that?
republic, that's
Our
not a,
attorney works
They'll
with
take
Jen.
care of all that.
I try not to get
it's just
attorneys
from the last
involved, but it's
one,
quite
right?
frankly,
It
I
was
don't
like down
know
here
my
originally,
hand,
but we moved it up.
Why is that
They
there?
know
we
the
replaced
procedure,
Mike.
and it's,
So I have a
In terms of
question.
the closeout,
There was another
Hmm?
one
in
with
terms
it.
of closing the items out, having to.
well, the road acceptance process with coordination with the selectmen and, this board has to give the okay that it's all right, but I wanted to explain to you the process, it's not done like overnight or 1 or 2 meetings, it's a process. And starting it in October to get on the warrant for the February
Yeah, but I
/ March
highlighted that. There
Is that-
should be another clean copy.
takes time.
So just for clarification, you're asking us to vote to abdicate might be a strong word, but
Yeah.
basically transfer responsibility for.
No, not even a vote, I just wanted to make you aware because I'm basically going outside. The jurisdiction is really with the chairman of the board and John is the zoning enforcement officer, but because Jen's had experience with this and Copeland and Page has logistically it's gonna be much easier for this.
I would suggest that you delegate that
I'm
responsibility.
not offended by that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's the right
Yeah,
thing to do.
no,
But Chairman,
we'll screw it up.
But we still have the final authority, is that right? You just.
Yeah,
you just
you
want-
ultimately,
we have the
basically, she's a
groundwork.
designee, you're giving her the authority to go through it, to set up the paperwork and the final closeout. I don't think that
And
that's a bad.
that's
Do we
fine with me.
do we
My,
need to do that formally, or just
You
say,
could take a vote
work
to do
with
that.
Jen, and,
Yeah, to close it, to work on the closeout
because
documents.
we still have to ultimately vote on it.
Correct.
I guess my point in asking that question was in terms of the stuff though, like the trees and, you know, the bounds and things like that, that's all,
You
roads
still
can't
own-
get accepted without,
Well, you guys, you still own that. What he's talking about is the legal description of the road, and there's a process of review, like I say, almost like a peer review. Highway superintendent's gonna go down there and look around, everything's good, or, geez, I don't quite like this, if we're gonna be owning it, I want this covered. I mean, we've already kinda walked through with him already, but the actual, the legal definition, meets and bounds and all that.
yeah, I just wanna
That's
make sure
something she
those
knows.
other kinda asks are bound to the, before we accept a road, the trees are gonna get in, the bounds are gonna get in, all that stuff is still kinda in
And that,
And-
that remains our responsibility.
100% is
And
with you. The
Jeff-
only thing I'm doing is the road acceptance with.
Jeff Walsh is monitoring that. He's our engineer. He's being paid by him, but he's our advocate there, and he's actually a pretty good engineer. He's about the business.
Makes sense.
Well, if Jen's willing to help us, then
I think it's
be
great.
sure to thank her. She can do all the tough stuff.
I think you'll thank her at the end.
Yeah.
No, it seems like the logical way to.
Yeah.
It really is, because they're gonna be communicating. See, town council won't communicate necessarily with our attorney. It's gonna have to go through somebody, because people will run up a bill and they wanna
Yeah.
make sure that the town council's getting paid, and it's, I don't know of any people that get directly through to town council. It usually goes through a conduit,
Yeah.
and, you know.
Which isn't a
it's-
bad thing.
Yeah, and with the board just meeting once a month, we'll be here forever. So that's why we wanted to go through Jen, and I just wanted to let you know so that you not think I'm going around the board or circumventing it. It's
Yeah,
just
that makes sense.
for that and that only is what we're using it for, none of these items on the list.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right.
So that should be it?
Goal in sight, right? Pretty
Yeah.
soon it's on to the next one.
Lynn's printing a
With that being
fresh
said,
copy of the
No pun
agreement
intended, the
release,
game started.
and then we just gotta sign it. These both have,
Okay.
I got
thank
one
you.
that's
I appreciate you
highlighted.
taking the time to stay
I got
here,
one that's
so-
All right, then, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Go Pat.
Yeah.
Edelman's back tonight.
Oh, yeah? Should be good. Thank
Take
you.
care.
thank you.
Have a good night.
Great job, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Do that again.
All right, we
that
have
it?
some minutes.
Can I go home now?
No.
Oh,
Rich, how'd that feel though?
May I go home now?
Comfortable?
No, no, I don't want to
Where was
ever
the
do that.
gavel?
Try it on for size?
You sure?
You need a gavel.
If you miss next year's meeting,
Where's that gavel?
I know. Don't threaten me.
all right, so we have August minutes.
how come Lynn got to go home?
No, she's printing a fresh copy of
He doesn't ever go home.
Really?
the agreement and release. This one's got a typo. Well, it's not a typo. It's got Chris's name twice, one of them on the top here. And then the other one's highlighted, so we want a fresh one.
All right, I like precision.
Stick with it.
So if everyone's reviewed these,
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from August.
A second.
jeez, all those in favor? So we're all set, right?
Just waiting
We just
for
gotta sign, yeah.
signatures.
Entertain a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. See you next month.